Joining us now for some analysis on the developments involving Iran and the United States are Wright, a fellow at the Wilson Center here in Washington. She's also a contributor for The New Yorker. And CBS News foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan is also with us. Robin, I want to start with you. Two big deals happened yesterday. Coordinated, not coordinated, the release of the prisoners and the lifting of the sanctions.
Well, 2.5 years ago, the United States initiated this diplomacy with Iran on its controversial nuclear program. And at every session, the Americans brought up the cases of the Americans imprisoned in Iran. And after a year of kind of getting no place, they realized they better establish a secret second channel with a different set of players. It was so secret that even other members of the nuclear team didn't know about it. And it was supposed to be a parallel track, but to move at their own pace. In the end, the momentum of one influenced the momentum of the other, and they came to fruition at the same time.
Margaret, the sanctions have been lifted. Now this swap has happened. Where is the United States now with respect to this deal, but also in its relationship with Iran?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, who other than John Kerry can pick up the phone and speak to the Iranians right now? There still are no diplomatic relations with Iran. So this is really, in so many ways, a test case. Let's see how this deal plays out. If inspections are unfettered, if over the next 10 years all the Iranians do what they have promised to do. But it's really a question of, do you look at this two ways? One, the Iranians have made a business of hostage taking. You could argue that has paid off to their benefit. This secret channel with Iran started in the first place over 3 hikers who were taken prisoner many years ago.
And that's the argument essentially that Marco Rubio makes.
Right, and John Kasich hinted at that as well. Or you could look at it and say this is a triumph of the moderates in Iran, really persuading the supreme leader that this is a track they should pursue. The thing, if you go with that argument, it's kind of hard to conclude that thought at this point, because this was not an ideological deal. This was an economic choice by Iran. So it's kind of too hard to tell yet if this is really a new age. It's certainly a new stage that we're at in U.S.-Iranian relations.
Robin, Secretary Kerry, when this deal was announced, said we're going to continue to be as hard on Iran on those other issues as we ever have been. Well, this question of testing missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles from Iran, what's the test there to see if the United States really is being as hard on them as they said they would be after this deal was agreed to?
Well, Iran conducted missile tests in October and November, which were in violation of a UN resolution. And so, as a result, the United States has today imposed new sanctions for those missile tests. And the message is, look, we do want to move into a different era. We do want to clean the deck on our past disputes and disarm Iran from the most deadly weapon in the world. So they have made progress on that front, but the United States message is we're going to continue to be tough, and we will impose new sanctions when warranted. And that's exactly what they've done.
Margaret, what's the reaction been in the region? When this deal was signed, there was a lot of Republicans saying that Israel's going to make moves on its own. Other nations in the region, Sunni nations, are going to react. What do we know about that reaction?
Right. Well, up until this point, this has all been an argument about a piece of paper. Now the deal actually has to, play out. And so this is going to be the test case over whether those arguments about, Iran sort of getting this big payday, which, by the way, Iran says only about 30 billion of the 100 billion is going to be liquid for them. A lot of it's tied up. So it's not necessarily the payday that some would argue they are getting. However, money's fungible. Who knows how that money is going to be invested in other ways for Iran. And so it's going to be a sort of a wait and see. But there is some truth to this argument that whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Israel, whether it's others, they are less worried about the nuclear program than they are about the empowerment of Iran to continue to interfere and meddle in the region. And that is still a problem for the United States. So it was interesting to have the White House say earlier this week that now what happens with Syria is another test for Iran. Can they be helpful on the diplomacy to end the war, the civil war in Syria, which they are direct players in on the ground? And so that's the next sort of test. But it's still unclear. When President Obama leaves office, what is the relationship the United States is going to have with Iran?
Yeah, and they're wondering who's going to pick up that relationship,
exactly.
Which is the point of our election. Robin, before we go, we have about 30 seconds or so. A former research assistant of yours is one of those released.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he worked for me in 2009. Gregarious young man who spent many years in Afghanistan as well as in Iraqi Kurdistan. He'd actually been to Iran on vacation, thought it was interesting. He had learned a bit of Farsi in Afghanistan and wanted to go back to take an intensive language class. He was just finishing up his 4-month course when he was picked up in early December.
It's amazing. Well, thank you, Robin, for being here. Great piece in The New Yorker. Margaret, thank you also for helping us understand this. We'll be right back with our political panel.